And so I'm hopeful that we can set a space here tonight that's safe, that is authentic, and that is open, that we can really have the kind of conversations that, like Mara, I believe communities need to have around this subject matter. So first and foremost, let's just come into the space and ground. So I want to invite you to, wherever you are, feel whatever's touching the earth. For most of us, it's your sits bones here. So you might want to take the fleshy part of your buttocks and extend it back a little bit so your sits bones can be more deeply connected with Mother Earth. And then if it works for you, allow your eyes to close. Now everyone that doesn't work for, if it doesn't work for you, just do your best to bring your awareness and focus inside. So interiorize your attention for a little bit. And then just notice what's present. Notice what's present for you. Right? And the ancients speak of, they say we're not just one body, that in fact we have 5 bodies. So we always do a little check-in at the level of those 5 bodies. And first is your physical structure. So take a moment and scan your structure, the muscles, the bones, the skin, connective tissue, all those things. And just notice the condition of your structure without judgment. Just notice the condition. And then shift your awareness to your energy. And if there's a little anxiety, or worry, or wonder, just notice that. Just notice whatever's there at the level of energy. Again, what we're exploring tonight has a tendency to be a little messy at times. It can be, it's historically been quite challenging. So without making anything good or bad or right or wrong, just notice. Notice what's present. And then notice your mind. Right? Our mind is our field of attention. In this moment, just notice the quality of your attention. And then pause there for a second and notice that you can notice those things. So there's something else back there that will allow you to notice the energy and the body and the mind. Tap into that. And from that space, bring your awareness to your heart. And find a sense of spaciousness right in the center of your heart. And from that sense of spaciousness, just become very present to the conversation that we're going to have this evening. One of the things that yoga invites us to do is to move beyond duality, beyond our own dualistic thinking. And in order to move beyond duality, we have to acknowledge that it exists. So from your heart there, connect in with some bigger energy. Now you can call that whatever you want, or you don't have to have a name for it at all. Some will speak of this as creative intelligence, a higher consciousness, the God of your understanding, higher power or source, Mother Nature. It doesn't matter what you call it. Just take a moment here and connect in with some bigger energy. From this space, we ask, may every fiber and cell of our being be open to moving beyond duality. May we be fully open to compassion. Compassion's our ability to feel pain that we share with others. Help us to notice when our own protective walls arise, recognizing that these are the barriers we often create when we're scared. When, if the conversation gets messy or sticky or raw, please bring us back to love. Please bring us back to our ability to care. Let us seize a vulnerable moment to humble us. When and if we ever were to become arrogant, let it soften us when we begin to harden. let it pierce through indifference and awaken us, even when we prefer to be asleep. Always, 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 let us return to love. Return us to love. And please now bring your hands to your hearts and from prayer hands. Take a big, deep breath in. Exhale, let it out through your mouth. Relax the jaw. Let's do that again. Big, deep breath in. Exhale and let it go. Good. Please take another big, deep breath in. And as you next exhale, gently let your chin fall towards your chest, your head towards your heart. And then with your next inhale, please open the eyes and lift up the head. Namaste. The light in me honors that in you. Namaste. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love to start out a conversation like this in what we often term as community agreements. Community agreements. And what I've found over the years in really any format that I do, the yoga 12-step recovery work, or this weekend here we're going to do some work around the samskara codependency, the key thing in order for energy to move is it needs to feel safe. And what we're hopeful happens is that energy will move. But energy will only move when it feels safe, right? So we have to set the conditions for safety in order for healing to happen, in order for any healing to happen. And one of the ways that I've found in order to do that is to have community agreements. And for this evening, we're a little community, we're a little sangha for the evening. And so I put together some community agreements that I think will hold safe space. They're fluid. If there's something else we need in order to hold safe space, we can always add another community agreement. We can always look to that. All right, so I'd love to go over the ones with you now in order to hold safe space for us this weekend. So the first one is recognize that we cannot know everything and that we are apt to see only what's familiar. Do you understand that? Does that make sense? Right, right. I'm reminded in that one, there's a Sufi metaphor, a story that's often told about the blindfolded men, or the men that they bring in a dark room, and the elephant. And so the story is that they took 6 men, and the room was completely dark. They blindfolded them, and they put them in this room and put them in specific places in the room, and with this huge object in the room. And they said, now, just from all this, even in the dark, tell us what this object is. So one was on the leg, right? And it's the leg of an elephant. And he said, it's a pillar. It's got to be a pillar, right? Because that's what he was feeling. Another one was feeling the ear. And he said, it's a fan. It's got to be a fan. The other one was at the tail. And he was feeling, all he could feel was the tail. And he said, it's a rope. It's a rope. But none of them were looking at the hole, right? They were only describing what it is that they were touching and what it is that they could see. They weren't looking at the hole. Does this make sense? We are apt to really, when we don't recognize that this little database, which is what this is, a database of the past, doesn't hold it all, right? We think that our interpretation of any situation is the interpretation. Make sense? All right, so we okay with that one? Thumbs up? All right, all right, all right. The next one is honor everyone's right to personal expression and commit to exploring a greater understanding. How's that? You okay with that one? Right? So this points out, honor all voices as there are many truths, and invite exploration of them for greater understanding. All of us have our own subjective experience in the world, and I feel like part of my job is to honor someone else's subjective experience on this planet. Honor, bear witness to whatever it is someone else is going through in their life. Make sense? All right. The next one is, before responding, stop and breathe. Recognize your feelings as your own. So it says leave space between things and take responsibility for your own feelings. All right? Does this make sense? Are we okay with that one? Mm-hmm. All right. The next one, assume that we all have the best intentions and we're all doing the best that we can. Right? We all make mistakes. Right? And the idea of this is to be open to feedback, offer feedback from that perspective, that we all make mistakes. We okay with these? All right, all right. And the last one here is recognize that relationships are a practice. Bring reverence, compassion, and a willingness to forgive. So this really is all about relationship and being in relationship. And relationships are definitely a practice. Without question, they're a practice. So it says bring that sense of compassion, and I would add to that even a sense of wonder. You know, just a sense of wonder about the whole thing. Bring that to the conversation, right? Instead, rather than a sense of judgment. Does that make sense? Are we okay with these? Right. So we'll kind of use these. We will use these as our foundation, the place from which we share, and all of those things, because hopefully this will keep safe space. And again, if we need more, we're always willing to add more. Okay. Any questions about anything so far? I love it. All right. So I thought I was, trying to figure out how to approach this whole thing and all that. I thought what I'd do is start out with a little reading. I want to read something. About 2 years ago now, a collaborator and I, Hala Curry, who does a lot of work in LA with programs for trauma-informed programs, to teach trauma-informed yoga. And she and I did a web broadcast called Beyond Duality. And for that, before we did it, I wrote up a little, kind of essay thing and submitted it. It was published in a couple of places, Elephant Journal and a couple other places it's been published in. And I thought I'd read that as kind of a context set, and then we'll go into some questions and all of that kind of stuff from that point. How's that? All right, okay. So, Mama's going to have to put on her glasses. Trip. All right. So this is called, kind of the title of what we're looking at tonight, Moving Beyond Binary. All right, and it says, Beyond Binary, Undoing the Samskara of Ism, right, of any ism. So samskara is a yogic term for those who don't know, and I explained it a little bit more in this particular essay when we get to that point. But generally it means habit, it means pattern, it means conditioning, how we're conditioned. All right, so it says yoga is movement. For many, the movement begins with the physical body. However, because the mind-body-spirit relationship is a continuum, soon the movement infiltrates every level of the being. Yoga is also provocative. It's personally taxed and stimulated me in ways I never saw coming when I signed up for my first asana class many years ago. At the time, I was absolutely clueless about a connection between my practice on the mat and my belief system, energy, and character. I simply wanted a little relief from the gnawing pain of sciatica. Anybody know what sciatica is? Yeah. That's what brought me to yoga. As my activism deepened, I became aware of how deeply embedded isms are in almost every aspect of our culture. The isms, racism, genderism, classism, sexism, ableism, etc., represent dualistic social constructs designed to ignore and/or remove human complexities. The constructs are set up in a binary, either or, good, bad, right, wrong framework, many times as a way to justify superiority of one group over another. What I've seen repeatedly over the years is that for any movement, yes, even the yoga movement, To ultimately survive, the samskara of ism must be addressed. Historically, the failure to investigate underlying social attitudes and behaviors has been the root of demise for many well-intentioned movements. In yoga, samskara is defined as past impressions, conditioning, or habit, or patterns. Samskaras can be inborn, acquired, or imposed, and really actually have very little to do with intellect. Repeating samskaras reinforces them, creating a groove that's difficult to resist. And even with resistance, the conditioning never completely goes away, except maybe in the case of enlightenment. So maybe for a Jesus or a Buddha or, or like that it goes away, but I always say I can't count on that. I use the F word way too much. I don't think that's ever going to happen for me. This is one reason why self-awareness practices don't have an expiration date. They're never complete. The binary framework generates impressions, samskara, at personal, cultural, and institutional levels. A deeper and somewhat personal explanation of how it works follows. The following quote, attributed to Pierre Desjardins, has become one of the most valuable tenets in my life journey. Mr. Desjardins said, "I am a spiritual being having a human experience. As an embodied experience, both those things are true. I am spirit and I am human. It's not the binary either or, this is an and." What I've realized is that if I deny, ignore, or create pretense around my spirituality or my humanity, I create personal suffering, which in yoga is called dukkha. In my humanity, I have an identity. I'm an able-bodied, African-American, this is 60-year-old, but now it's 62, right? 62-year-old woman, born and raised in the Midwest United States. Yoga teaches that identities are constructs, that none of these have meaning on their own. As a spirit being, I'm well aware that this constructed identity neither defines or determines me. However, because I live and move in a material world, this identity unquestionably informs not only my personal day-to-day experience, but others' experience of me. In a cultural binary framework, value and meaning are attached to each identity fragment. Black is less than white. Young is better than old. Male is generally better than female, unless you're a black male. Able has more value than disabled, and depending on where you live, the Midwest is either better than or worse than other locales. You can think of these as cultural prejudices. Prejudices are learned prejudgments. Every human being has them. It's built into how we're socialized. Prejudices are problematic because they are often normalized, making them difficult to identify. When we act on our prejudices, we discriminate. Wikipedia defines discrimination as the prejudicial treatment of an individual based on their actual or perceived membership in a certain group or category. Avoiding, harassing, excluding, ridiculing, slandering, threatening, violence, and jokes are all examples of discriminatory behavior. In yogic speak, there are also examples of avidya, which is ignorance based in false perception. The binary framework is used culturally and institutionally to delineate power, and it's power that turns prejudice and discrimination into an ism. From power comes written and even more insidious unwritten policy. Prejudice plus discrimination plus power equal oppression. Oppression literally means to press down. Relative to this discussion, Prejudice and discrimination get culturally and institutionally built in and become nearly invisible as they come to be normalized. The ism is now a systemic samskara. The mass incarceration of African American males is an example of systemic oppression. An examination of the disparities in drug sentencing reveals that while 5 times as many whites use drugs as African Americans, African Americans are sent to prison for drug offenses at 10 times the rate of whites. And that's a statistic that came from the American Civil Liberties Union. The normalization of this became apparent to me recently after a friend confronted her adolescent son about drug involvement. In response to her, he argued, "Mom, if you're concerned that I might get arrested and go to jail for this, you don't need to worry about it. After all, we're not black." True story. Right? An individual need do nothing explicitly to oppress another. However, when we deny or marginalize the samskara's existence, we participate in its perpetuation. Unconscious thoughts, action, and speech, whether our own or those of someone else, preserve and reinforce the samskara, deepening its groove. And it hurts everyone, even those in the dominant group. Internalized superiority separates and dehumanizes. Superiority often expresses itself as unfounded and unjust fear that ignores the connectedness among all living things. It keeps people from experiencing the richness and fullness of our humanity, which is experienced through deep communion with others. Because of the social, political, and institutional implications, the cultural conversation about any ism often turns into a 3-ring circus at best, a horror show at its worst. It's my hope that the yoga and contemplative community can catalyze a different conversation, a conversation that brings compassionate inquiry and awareness, which are the cornerstones of our practice, into the investigation of our socially conditioned life, taking a deep look at what we often buy into as normal. Undoing the samskara of ism is neither simple or easy. It's perhaps the hardest work many of us will ever do because it's not an intellectual undertaking. It will require us to skillfully use every tool we've learned in our practice. That said, if there's ever been a community that's up for the task, I believe it's ours. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to use that maybe as a context. And, you know, then I was just going to throw out some questions so we could begin to talk about them in general as a group. And, you know, I'm wondering, what do you guys think? Why do you think this has historically been such a challenging conversation? Why do you think it's been such a challenging conversation for folks to have? Yes, ma'am.
I think because people are afraid to admit their prejudices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've all got those. Remember, I love that in that definition of prejudice, right? We've all got it. These are, yoga talks about these two, you know, in the model, one of the models the yogis give us is the model of the kleshas. And when they talk about the kleshas are these things that disconnect us, right? And they talk about two. One is attachment, right? And the other one's refusal, right? And right, we avoid or attach, right? And within those, we get to that exact thing. You know, we want to push away. I agree. Others, what are your thoughts around this? Yes?
Because white people enjoy being privileged.
Well,
And they're the ones in power, so.
I actually can't speak to that because I'm not white. What I can say though, you know, I can imagine that if I had a particular asset, you know, and I knew it was an asset, and then my fear-driven response was that if there's not enough to go around, you know, I imagine I'd be pretty that's where it was coming from, I'd be upset. Yeah. Yeah. What else? Why do you think this is such a challenging conversation?
I think it makes us vulnerable when we start talking about it, both sides,
Yeah.
and so it's easy to avoid it.
Yeah, yeah. We want to avoid that which feels uncomfortable, right? Right. And I always love this because what does yoga invite us to do? Right? Right. It invites us to stay present, you know, and that doesn't mean present just through the lollipops and the cookies and the unicorns and the rainbows, right? It's to stay present with whatever it is, you know, whatever's in front of you. That's the only way to do it. Otherwise, when we ignore or deny or repress, you know, my experience is with things like that, then it grows muscles and hair and, you know, gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that's what we've seen in this country. You know, that we have wanted to ignore and deny and repress and, you know, just not tell the truth about what it is. And then it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And unless we do that, I can't see, it'll never move. It won't move. The energy won't move. Right? Yeah, so, yes ma'am, Stacy.
And I think people don't know what to do with their prejudices.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, okay, I admit I'm prejudiced. And what then do I do? Because, like you said, you know, we were taught, raised to be that way, and we have that samskara that we keep going back to, that automatic response. So how do we then go beyond that automatic response?
Yeah.
Even when you really want to, but it's like, I don't know how.
Yeah.
You know, and who do you go to ask that?
Right.
You know, who's going to teach you that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing about samskara because it too doesn't sit in binary. It's not, a samskara itself isn't necessarily good or bad or right or wrong. And ultimately the cause and the cure are the same thing. So I'm going to develop new habits and new patterns and, you know, new ways of going about things that serve me versus the things that don't. I mean, this is not the way things are. The habits and patterns we've developed is not serving our culture. It's not serving us anymore, right? So the way to work with that is the exact same way that they were developed. We want new habits and new patterns. And it really gets difficult when it's systemic, right? And that's what we have to remember. These things now are so deep and they've been going on for so long and it's been set up that way that we're talking deep, deep, deep systemic samskara, right? So, you know, again, this one ain't going to be simple or easy. It isn't. But what we know is that the way it is ain't working. The way it is ain't working. Yeah.
Yeah, I came back to what you said earlier about where you're at to see what's familiar.
Mm-hmm.
That really stuck out to me because I think a lot of the dialogue I hear is like people just, we are just not looking beyond a certain point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And the invitation here, in order for things to move, is to be open to something different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, there's been a lot in the news lately about Black Lives Matter, right? And that's been a charged conversation about that movement, even about the name itself. What do y'all think about that? Hello? Yes, ma'am.
I'm just gonna go back to what I kind of said about like white privilege. I just think that white people are just kind of scared, you know, that they're gonna be the ones put in that position, that they're gonna be oppressed now. So basically they're trying to make it seem, you know, like the black people are the
Like
ones
it's
that are
right.
racist now. So I feel like a lot of that is just the fear and building the wall, like you said, like, to hide behind.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, you know, I was reading this someplace. A lot of times I've heard a lot of people put an invisible only at the front. like the thought is only Black lives, and that's not what that says. That's not the, you know, the intent of that. And then I was reading some sign, or somebody said to me the other day, you know, the other response to that you're hearing is all lives matter, right. And, you know, the question becomes, how can all lives matter if Black lives don't? You know, how does that work? How can all lives matter if Black lives don't? Right. And what are some of the other things about that? What do you hear? What do you hear in the news all the time relative to the pushback around that?
Yeah, I think it also sets a tone of I'm right, you're wrong. So it creates another divide where if someone's right, well then someone has to be wrong. Is that binary?
Yeah, it's binary.
So
Definitely
that
binary.
goes to that of, you know, one is good, one is not. One is right, one is wrong.
Yeah.
And that, to me, it just, you know, it sets up another divide.
Yeah. And what I hear in the Black Lives Matter movement is the house is on fire, right? A group raising their hands going, the frickin' house is on fire here, right? We need some support, some emergency action, because the house is on fire, right? And so that, for me, has always been what that movement has been all about. Please recognize the house is on fire. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think also for me, it says Black Lives Matter, you of other races recognize us, but also within the African American race, we need to start recognizing too that our
That we
lives
matter. Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I think it's a whole, so to your point of the house is on fire.
Right.
It's,
Yes, so, and absolutely. And that was kind of getting at kind of what I was alluding to a little bit earlier. What I often hear as the big, you know, we want to make counterpoint, you know, this kind of argument going back and forth. You'll hear folks, like, I can't help but say it, on like Fox News.
Don't think about it.
But I can't help it. I can't help but turn it on. Right. It's really bad. So, the counter argument that you'll hear all the time is Black on Black crime, and all the stuff relative to stuff about that, and it's really a trip statistically. When you look at what's going on with that, most crimes are committed interracially, right? So you could easily just say white on white crime is just as explosive as black on black crime. Most crime is committed that way. So that's a nullified argument to begin with. And and then you look at, again, systemically the things that have been set up around Black communities, right? For example, I heard, again, Fox News, somebody talking about how Black men, were likely to father children from all these different women in all these different relationships, right? Have multiple children from multiple women in being baby daddies, right? And all I could think about was, in slavery, that was how a Black man was rewarded, right? You were rewarded that way. The more children you had, the more money you made and you didn't get attached. You couldn't get attached, right? Because you knew your child was going to be taken away from you, right? And we think this kind of thing is far away, but it's really not. And I'll give you an example from my own life. My grandfather's mother, so that's my great-grandmother. I'm 62 years old, right? My great-grandmother was the child of a master-slave relationship out of Kentucky. My great-grandmother, right? It's not that far back, right? And I'm a great-grandmother today, right? And I think about that, right? My great-grand, so that's rape, by the way. So you got the energy of rape pervading all through that family. Right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? And if you think that doesn't affect your being, it absolutely does. One of my teachers said one time, you may not know your great-great-great-great-grandmother, but you've got her nose. You look at a picture from a long time ago, you've got her nose. And if you think that energy doesn't pervade, right, it pervades all the way through. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, I actually read recently, statistically, African-American men are more engaged in their children's lives than other men of other cultures. So even if they are having these children with these other women, as Fox would like to report, they are still engaged in these children's lives.
I love it. Yes, ma'am.
I think building the caricature of the black male and like Muslims too, it dehumanizes groups of people and makes it easier for people to pass judgment on them.
But it had to be set up that way. I love where I am and where I live. So I'm not saying that and it's an and I recognize what's going on. I recognize what's going on. The Constitution says all men were created equal. All men are created equal. And at the time it was written, the economy of this whole thing was set up on slavery, right? So they had to figure out a way to make that at least somewhat true. So, they made black people 3/5 of a person, number one, right? You only counted as 3/5 of a person, right? And then, they had to create this good, bad, right, wrong, because they wanted to make themselves right. They wanted to be able to say, and this whole concept of race was created, right? Yeah, and it's amazing to look at these things. It is amazing to look at these things, and these things pervade all the way through everything. Yes?
So Nikki, I have a question then. So that energy from your great-grandmother being raped carries down through you. How does the cycle, how do you break that cycle?
Yeah. And I'm so grateful. I believe that I am doing the work in my family to break the cycle. Unfortunately for me and most of the folks in my family, the way that they dealt with things was alcohol and drugs and all those kinds of things. That's hard energy to hold, right? And it's painful, right? And we were talking earlier from a yogic perspective, the 5 bodies. Yoga also says when there's anything that lies across those 5 bodies in an unfinished, incomplete, unresolved, right, across any of those bodies, that it leaves a toxic residue in the system. It leaves a toxic residue until whatever it is. So that's not just the undigested meat in your belly, it's the undigested experiences of your life, unresolved experiences of our life. It leaves a toxic, residue in the body. And just at a physical level, let's say, I'm a vegetarian, but let's say undigested meat in the belly. That's such a painful condition for me. I want to run out to CVS and grab some Maalox or some what, not that that's going to do anything but cover over the real problem, right? So when it's an undigested experience in my life, that's painful too. So I want something to drown that. So the way that I dealt with that, and the way that a lot in my family history dealt with things like that, was via alcohol and drugs and whatever it is that they needed to do in order to resolve the pain in that moment. That stuff works for a minute, right? But it doesn't get rid of the underlying condition. So for me, it's been doing the work and being willing to go deep. Mine came out of a desperation because I couldn't go along that path anymore, right? It came out of a real desperation, but it takes doing the work. It takes going deep. It takes, for everyone.
That's what I'm trying to stay hopeful and optimistic, but when we're talking about a whole country that has deep-seated for generations,
Right.
how do we move?
Well, for me, it's like the whole thing with alcoholism and all of that kind of stuff. The buck gets to stop here, right? The buck gets to stop here. And, you know, I'm hopeful that because of changes in me, that my grandchildren won't have to experience the same kind of pain that I've had to experience. Does this make sense? Yeah. Me doing the work is going to allow that. But for this, it's going to take a collective. This is cultural, it's institutional, it's personal, and all of those levels have to be addressed. All of those levels have to be addressed. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I hear your question, and I hear, what you're encouraging in this idea of a collective and collective energy, and that needing, at least I personally need to believe that that's going to have more influence than anything else when we feel so powerless right now as part of this larger system. But what you said about safety, needing safety to move energy, brought up a whole new set of questions for me.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not we as a country are going to feel safe, I don't feel safe.
Relative to...
Just in general, like in my life, as a member of this country, as someone who's living in the U.S., I don't feel safe. And I don't know what to do to change that for myself. How is that impacting the collective? Even with the best intentions of working towards a positive goal, if I don't feel safe, how is the whole country going to feel safe?
And how do you define safe?
It's a really good question. I don't know that I can answer it right now.
And that may be the inquiry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may be the inquiry. Because, I have had external, what looked like the absolute external safest environment, but what I was creating for myself internally, I could never find safety. So I had to, do you understand what I'm saying? Right. So I had to look at what that really, at a deep level in me, what that really was. Yeah. Thank you. It's a great inquiry. It's a fabulous inquiry. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Well, so we're all sitting here in this room, open and willing to talk about these things. But I keep thinking of people in my own family who I'm close to and love. And there's so many different, like, I'm a black woman, I'm Catholic, that's a whole lot of drama. which you put and everything. I'm single, so there's all these, kind of like what Jenna was saying, there's all these places where people will look, like even my own family, well, that just can't work,
Right.
So even though we're all trying to work through these issues, like I can hear my mom saying, I don't know why you would go to an event with all those white people talking about race. Like I can just hear, hear people say things like I'm hearing this being open and I'm not believing it, but you're hearing the voices, and then you're wondering, well, this is a lovely, this is a lovely room, but as soon as you walk out the door, it's going to hit you like that 95-degree heat, So how did we build a collective in a space? Like we can do the work. Like I've doing all this work. Like I told, but I don't want no more communion. Fine. But you know, how do you do if other people aren't doing the work? You know, do you just hope that everybody's doing the work has like a cross on their head or something? They glow orange. I mean, hope, you know.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a definitive way to really answer that. For me, it's being in integrity with what the yogis have told me that through my thoughts, is the way that I do transformation, the way that transformation happens, is my spheres of influence relative to that, I got 3. And that's the way I think, and the way I speak, and the way I walk in the world. And if those are in integrity with my highest values and with what I have determined are most important to me, then I'm in integrity with myself. And so, you know, I feel like integrity for me means when I see shit, I gotta call it.
Or if I'm at Sweet Greens and this lady just like gets in front of me with her, you know, just kind of looks at me like, and you know, and joins her little ladies who lunch group, I'm chill with that.
Well, part of it for me is sometimes I notice that I think that I may know what that other person is thinking or feeling, and a lot of times in that, until I really ask and bear witness to what it is that's going on with them, I'm all the way off. Because I'm coming from this little bitty database that's only holding the past, and so I'm referencing the present with the past. That's, to me, what the beauty of yoga offers.
But you're aware of it, like, and I can realize when I'm aware of it. But there's so many people out there who just aren't, and that's when you have a Philando Castile, or that's when you have, you know, because people are pulling guns and shooting, and because they're not aware, they're not taking that 5 seconds. So how do you know? So the question is, and that's right. All that is basic, but that's like the base. That's the basis of this problem, you know, that we're having now.
Yeah. I agree. Yes, ma'am.
So there's so much that people catch on video anymore. There's so much that you can see on video. You can see the shootings on video, some of which we're discussing, or you can see the protest march and that being destroyed on video. And I just feel like with social media, everything is accessible every single second of your day, of your life, that we're so desensitized. Why aren't we really pissed off when we see these images? Because it's coming up on your stream in Facebook, like with your kitten videos and your this videos and everything else. And you know, your kids, where is like the stop and pause and like, how, first of all, that you even have Facebook. There's just no outrage. There's not even a pause in your day like, whoa, all right, well, you know, the next screen, the next video. I guess I'm wondering, how is it even going to be possible to go forward where we are with the amount of news and videos and just the amount of stuff that's thrown at us every day? I mean, personal transformation, good luck with that, right? Millions and millions of yogis out there, and here's what's happening in Louisiana, and here's what, you know. When is like the media, when is the social media going to actually do something to help us feel better? Because we certainly spend a lot of time looking at it and scrolling through it and sharing it with each other.
Yeah.
When are we going to like do something good with it?
And I really get that. I really get that. And one of the big tenets in my life, or one of the things like that, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and really being real clear about what my human experience is, and not trying to deny or ignore it. But the other one that guides me so much is the serenity prayer. And that's, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. I can't change that, right? I can't change what is. That's what is. What I am able to do is change what's next relative to my responsibility to it, my reaction to it, my response to it, right? But that's going to be there. And so there's no sense in me fighting that because that's wasted energy. It's just wasted because I can't do anything about it, right? And so I got to accept what I cannot change, right? And then make a decision relative to, you know, what's next? Yeah, because that's gonna be there. There's no sense in me having all that stuff with it. Yeah, ooh, I love this. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Yeah.
Okay. In reference to the social media thing, I think that it's a tool, like anything. And you see a lot of madness on there, right? But at the same time, there's a lot of information. Like I found out about this on Facebook. Okay, so it can be used for good, it can be used for binary again, right? But what I thought about as you were speaking was, with all of this that has been going on in the country, it was very ironic to me that I have friends, Facebook friends, who are yogis, right? And throughout the year, they were posting, you know, around Thanksgiving, you know, prayers for the turkeys, and, you know, it's horrible how the number of turkeys that are being killed. But then when stuff like this goes on, quiet. That's nothing. So at one point I put something out there like, don't say nothing to me about the turkey. I know. When you have people that are being murdered on the street, it's just and so to me, it's reflective of who you're dealing with. You understand what I'm saying? Like, who I am, if whatever I'm posting, right, you see who I am, right? What's important to me, what I think about during the day, you know, what I may be going through. That's who you see with my post. And so that if I'm not responding or if I'm not posting about the Sandra Bland, the fact that, you know, it's been a year since her death, if I'm not, you know, posting about Tamir Rice, if I'm not, you know, if I'm not posting about those things, then personally me, and it may be judgment, but I'm questioning, you know, like when you start posting about the turkeys, you're not posting about these human beings who are losing their life. I'm beginning to question.
And that's a conversation. And, you know, that's when I asked my friends, my son was saying the same thing. He put in a post, there was more outcry for Cecil the lion. Now, what happened to Cecil was horrible, right? But you didn't hear anybody talking about lion on lion crime, right? Or there were no conversations about, you know, any of that kind of stuff. You heard more outcry for Cecil the lion. And, you know, and like I said, it's information and it's a conversation. I've had that conversation with several of my yogi friends. I've had that conversation. And what I heard back was just what we're talking about here. I'm scared to open up that conversation. And a lot of it has to do with, what's your name? Melissa was saying about a little, it's going to make me uncomfortable. Right? That conversation is not comfortable. Right? It's not comfortable for me. Yeah. All right. It's an uncomfortable conversation. And we run from discomfort. We run from discomfort. Yeah. Thanks for your comment. That's really, but for me now, it's incumbent on me. I got to stand up and call that one. You know. One, two, Maura.
I was going exactly what you just said. I think we underestimate our own power. And it goes back to what you were saying about your family. I've had situations in my family where, I'll give you an example. My family has been extremely color struck. And colorism is the result of this racism we're talking about.
yeah.
My family for generations has tried to breed out this melanin.
Oh, yeah.
And then my father comes and gets with a woman who looks like me, and now here I am. And I'm the only woman of this skin color in my family. And they tried to fix my hair. They tried to do all kinds of things to make me beautiful. And I was raised really not believing I was beautiful until I came to that realization in adulthood. And then I educated my family on that just by being myself and opening up those uncomfortable conversations. And it's amazing how they've changed me, the little girl, how I'm educating my aunts and my grandmother, and I'm changing, my grandmother's in her 70s, how I've changed her mentality on something that she was raised to believe. So we underestimate our own ability to really create change in the people around us through our social media, through just having an uncomfortable conversation, even when people don't want to have it.
Absolutely.
You would be surprised how much power you actually have, so just don't diminish that or underestimate that in yourself.
And you'd be surprised how enlightening it is when you're having that conversation with someone. You know, it's scary at first, but boy, does it create an intimacy.
Yes.
Boy, does it create a depth. You know, when you can really, 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 it's, you know, what that thing was saying. You get the richness and the fullness of really being with the person that's in front of you, right? Rather than the story I make up about the person, my image of the person that's in front of me. And that's life. That's when we enjoy the richness and fullness of life, when we can really be with what's in front of us, right? Rather than the image. For years, I always talk about in my work, how for years I was in relationship with an image rather than being in relationship with, you know, even the image I had of myself. You know, I was in relationship with an image rather than being in relationship really with what's here. And that's a biggie. That's a biggie. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, few things now.
I love it. I love it.
For me, I think that this is a very positive thing that's come out of all the madness and chaos of social media. To me, it's, you know, this is very exciting. This is what we need. This exact sharing of experiences. I've been like, you know, all over the place for a couple, you know, since everything's boiled over. But I was listening to a podcast this morning that struck me, and it was discussing non-complimentary behavior. Flipping the script was the title of the podcast, and that's what Dr. Martin Luther King and Gandhi, what they did. What they, you know, instead of meeting hostility with hostility, you meet hostility with love or kindness. And I think I feel so overwhelmed and powerless. But I again try to do that, even though it's so hard to do, because, you know, to me that's what's happening in our country. We're just meeting hostility with hostility, and we don't understand each other. We can't, you know, we're not listening to other people's experiences, and there's so much shame and guilt, and we need to do that. So, and that's a lot of what I interpreted from your story. You flipped the script with that energy, with your family. And, yeah, I think that's all I have to say right now.
I would love if you could talk about, or we could talk about a little bit, this concept of doing the work.
Yeah.
Because I think it's something that's thrown around a lot, especially in the yoga community. And it, you know, some of you were in class this morning, I was talking about this, right? Love and light and prayers are great and they're powerful, but it's not necessarily anything that changes.
Oh my goodness.
So what do you mean when you say do the work?
I mean, for me, it's been this process of reintegration. It really has. It's been about reintegrating and looking at all parts of myself. And really, and that means human beings are far too complex to label good, bad, right, wrong. Right? We've all got all of that stuff inside of us. all of us, right? And being aware, for me, it becomes deeper and deeper and deeper levels of awareness, right? And so for me, it's been like, okay, now, these are my thoughts, these are my actions, these are my, I'm do addiction recovery. So one of the things in the 12-step program is a thing called a 10th step, right? And the 10th step says, you look at, if I get this feeling or this discord that's coming up in me, I gotta look at my thoughts, my speech, my actions to what's causing this disconnect. Where in this 5-body system is this disconnect happening, right? And those things, it's not necessarily really easy to look at because we're, again, taught to run away from all that kind of stuff. It's not particularly pleasant sometimes, or it's been quite a road. But it means deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper levels of awareness, right? And of awareness, of self-acceptance, of all of those things. And it's been quite a process at every level, at the level of the physical body, at the level of energy, at the level of mind, at the level of behavior, even the spiritual heart, right? So, yes.
So what would be some recommendations, especially because I can see who's watching along, right? For people that don't have a regular yoga practice, what are examples of doing the work?
Therapy, right? The right kind, if you do the right kind of therapy. I come from the school that it takes more than that. For me, it's taken what I call a sustainable platform of several things. And for me, it addresses all 5 of those bodies. So I need to look at diet, because you do become what you eat, for real, right? This is what you eat. So, there's some things relative to diet. There's some things relative to, I believe that the issues live in our tissues, which is the theme of our program, right? So there's got to be a way to release there. There's got to be a way to make sense cognitively of this stuff and bring some alignment relative to everything across all 5 of those bodies and connecting with something bigger, whether that's a collective or whether it's spirit, or however it is that you define that bigger energy in life. So it runs across all of those things. And I would say that applies collectively too. It's not just that I'm talking about it at a personal level, but the same thing applies collectively, to any organization. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
There's a whole lot I'd like to say.
Go for it.
It would take me a few days to get
Oh,
out.
well.
First off, I'd like to appreciate the passion from the young lady sitting over there. I also agree with the Martin aspect, love, but I also agree with Malcolm's as well. This is also very powerful. And that's what our world is dealing with right now, because we have to understand that we can't possibly be surprised that the Black Lives Matter organization is coming to be. We can't be surprised that it is, because if you look at how the world is oppressed and everything, if you keep pushing somebody, eventually some of these things are going to come out, and people are done with one way. Unfortunately, they failing to love because they feel like it's failing. We need another option, we need another way, another course. So they're fighting back. And if you look at how life history is, it kind of changes. It never stays the same. Countries, leaders, races, they're here, and then what was at the top has to fall to the bottom, like the Tower of Babel. I mean, it's never going to stay the same. So whatever countries, whatever races they feel inferior or superior, it's going to change, and it never stays the same. And it's sort of like our race is playing a waiting game, and we've waited long enough, and we feel that it's time to fight back. Is this the necessary course of action? That's not for me to say, but it does need some course of action. So
I hear you. You know, I was talking to someone, you know, after the horrible events and things that happened in Dallas, you know, and acknowledging those things that happened in Dallas, and it was absolutely ridiculous and horrible, those things. And that occurred for me as a reaction, right? That was a reaction, right? And it may be a reaction to several things. My understanding is that there were some leftover war issues and PTSD and things like that were going on in that situation as well. But it occurred to me as a reaction, right? What I see going on in this country, though, relative to black men and relative, is a strategy. It's a strategy, right? You know, this systematic elimination is the mass incarceration, right? That's a strategy, right? And it's been a strategy that's been in place for a long time, right? And so, does that make sense? Yeah, yeah. And so we got to address that.
This world is just, it's like the way things go, like what you were saying right here on Facebook. People don't see because they do not wish to see. And some others just are oblivious to it. I was talking to one of my friends.
They're scared.
Yeah.
You know, this is coming out of fear. There's fear all the way around the board. You know, there's this deep-seated fear. And thank you. Yes. Let's go here for a second.
This might seem kind of random, but it's connected. I think of anybody who's in this area and there's action news. And since I was a little girl, you always hear about all the black men in North Philly getting shot. But if there's one white kid that gets hurt, nobody should be hurt. But like I always think we're sort of desensitized to hearing about black men getting shot and killed. And I think someone brought up Facebook and everything being able to be captured on video.
Right.
I think about the stuff we're now seeing on video. What about the stuff we haven't seen on video?
That's right.
And should be a wake-up call for everybody. But it's, you know, and little kids watch the news. Oh, 5 black guys died. Whatever, you know. But one white kid dies, and there's a big. It's just so blatantly in your face growing up. I think.
I tell you what was it. Last time I was here, and I was, you know, just looking around this area, and I'll tell you what struck me was all the Native American names of all the streets and all the towns and all of that, right? And that, you know, we're trying to do Tadasana on what's got to be shaky ground. You understand that? And how do you find foundation when you're standing on shaky ground? Does this make sense? Right? And it's the same thing relative to slavery and how can anybody found foundation when we're standing on shaky ground?
And this is not just, I'm going to slip one thing.
No, that's right.
In the beginning of the class, you asked why we're so afraid of having this conversation, and I just kept going back to slavery. Nobody wants to talk about it ever. Like, how can you have an equal society where a whole group of people have been enslaved? I mean, I just keep going back to it over and over, and it sounds so like obvious, like duh, but it seems to be the basis of much of it.
And at some point, I do want to bring this up. This is one of the original conversations Maureen I had a while back. She called me up one time, and it was out of this, what I've heard in the yoga community, you know, sometimes it's getting less. We don't need to talk about this because we're all one. We're all one. And so, you know, why would anybody even say, why do we even need to discuss this? Because we're all one. Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit.
I actually realized as he was speaking that when I meant meeting hostility with love, I was thinking of the white community. I wasn't even thinking about the movement because I'm actually mixed race, So I feel like I have a unique, I move in and out, like I'm kind of mostly accepted and then I'm kind of not, and I'm, you know, on both sides. And so I have some white friends, and one of them, you know, she has a lot of friends who have husbands who are cops, and like she's saying, you know, they're all like, you know, saying these terrible things, and they're all getting worked up, and I, you know, and I didn't have any sympathy for these women, you know, and I'm like, I really think that they need to meet what's happening with love, with compassion. They need to like consider why people are upset and why is everything erupting. That's actually what I was saying.
Yes, and then we'll come
to speak to that meeting, Hate with Love, I'm having a hard time, meeting my hate with love. I'm beginning to resent my own race. I don't know where to find the compassion for the people who don't believe that something is wrong with this country right now.
Yeah, I do have some. We're going to talk about some suggestions and some books. Probably one of the best books that I've read around this is by a woman named Tima Oken, and she has written a book called I'm going to space it now. It is The Emperor Has No Clothes, and the subtitle of the book is Talking About Race to People Who Don't Want to Hear It, or something like that. Right? And it gives just a really wonderful perspective on how to have the conversation with people who don't want to hear it. Another one is a book called, I just recently read, called Waking Up White. And that's a really, really good one about having the conversation that people are avoiding or holding back from. And you get the same arguments over and over. You're going to get, you'll get the individualism argument, Michael Jordan made it. Look at Oprah. We have a black president, right? So you're going to get that argument, right? And so you get the same arguments over and over again. And she just gives you a really good way to really break those down historically. Yes.
I think going back to that, to what you're saying, I think that for all races, I think we have forgotten what empathy is. And I can't know what it is to be a black male.
That's right.
And I also, but I can try to have empathy for what you face every day. And vice versa. You can, I think that until we do the work to learn what empathy is.
Yeah, and empathy being very different from sympathy.
Not sympathy, right, definitely not sympathy.
And then we get what we'll talk about a little bit this weekend, am I compassionate or am I codependent? Right? And so, right? And this is some of the conversation we're going to have over the weekend. What's the wisdom to know the difference? And that's my work. Right? That's my work. And that's what I believe that yoga, this thing, offers to it. That I can be clear in my work, as I walk in the world.
Right, because I can't, as a white woman, I can't know. I can't. But I can respect and work myself through love.
Right.
That's all that. But I think
I know in my case with that, what I can know is what it feels like in me when I'm setting myself up to be the benchmark.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
I'm setting myself up to be that, you need to look like me, you need to act like me, you need to have my values, you need to have my thing. And then I'm acting out of, in that case, the avidya that the yogis speak about, out of this ignorance, that my interpretation of the situation is the interpretation. Right? I'm measuring you against me. I'm measuring, and this is what the beauty of what doing the work, the yogic work, has us look at. Yes, this, I'm sorry, I don't have names yet, I'm usually real good at names.
I have two pieces. The first one is when you were talking about how yogis are saying that we don't really have to pay attention to it. For me, I became a social worker thinking I was going to save the world. That was 20 plus years ago.
You did.
Right. And I got a reality check that helping is the sunny side of control. And
Oh, yes. Child.
Say that again.
Yeah.
T-shirt.
So say that again.
Yeah, that's
Helping is the sunny side of control.
You should
That's
put it on
what
a t-shirt. That's right. That's where that's codependence.
Right.
Yeah.
So, right, and I came from a family of people that there was a lot of codependency. So the other piece, the piece to that part was that I became present and was able to recognize my own issues of why I felt like, oh, you know, it's not, it's everybody. It's not, you know, just me. The second piece is you mentioned earlier, early on you started about trauma-informed care. And you were talking about shaky grounds. We need to like educate about trauma because it started really early on. Anything that is happening right now is traumatic. It's not only happening to the people, but also the vicarious trauma that's happening. And I think that it's just something we need to continue to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, even watching the Facebook shit. It can be, you know, I looked at, I've got two grandsons. One is 26, the other one's 24. And, you know, I'm watching their reaction to all of this, and it's traumatic. It's traumatic.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
Really traumatized.
Yeah.
And I think we need to educate people so that we talk about any, you know, change or suggestions or any of that. And there is a big movement that's starting to happen about talking about trauma-informed care and trauma-informed awareness, but it's not enough. It's not, you know, and it will be one day, but it's just, we've got to continue to talk about the issues and the issues that are in the issues and what happened.
Yes, ma'am.
Lost some of my words, Erin. I know you actually brought some clarity to it. I'm looking at the picture for the last, just for the past week or so, but that's just a small snippet. The amount of fear that is everywhere right now. I come from my family, I'm the mother of 4 sons, 3 of them are stepsons. One of them was adopted, he's black. I fear for him. I hear that he's training himself how to use a gun. But and my work is, I guess I need to find a way to not put a wall up with this. I know he needs to find his own way. But that's just one example. There's just fear everywhere. And I think that, like I'm seeing these hashtags creating tribes. I'm not seeing them, I have yet to see them help. And I'm wondering where we're going with the hashtags, where we're going with the fear.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You know, I like you, I had it too. I was telling more about my oldest grandson. From college, he went to his first apartment. This was when after Trayvon Martin was killed, and he was going in his first apartment. And he took a picture of himself and put it on Facebook, and he was signed and released it to his new apartment, which should have been this really celebratory experience. But he had on a hoodie, right? And all I could think about, I couldn't think about how wonderful it was that my grandson was having his first. All I could think about is you've got to take off that hoodie. You're setting yourself up for as a target, you know. And it just blew my mind that that was my reaction. You know, instead of being happy that he was at this crossroads, this line of demarcation in his life, all I could think about was, you got to take that off. I mean, you know, crazy. You got to take that off. Right? So,
I just want to speak more to, I want to share, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but not much. Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Blue Lives Matter. From my perspective, and it's just my perspective,
Right.
I'm seeing it dividing.
Yeah.
More divisive than helping.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, there's a lot of energy going into trying to make people understand what Black Lives Matter means, to
Right.
take the only away, or to take,
Right. Right. And just another perspective on that, rather than the perspective that I've been holding on that one, is that house is on fire. And, you know, Black Lives Matter is standing up to say, somebody recognize that this house is on fire, right? So you got somebody else over there saying, okay, but my house is right next to your house. And if, you know, if we don't do something about my house, then it's gonna catch on fire too. But that house is on fire now. We've got to gather around to put the fire out of that, or everything's gonna catch on fire.
I'm just wondering, is there, and not that we need to change what we're saying, what we're labeling this, in general, is there always going to be a division? Whether, no matter what we call it.
Well, I tell you what, I know we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So at some level we are one, but we are not the same. Right? And so there's a difference between sameness and oneness. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We're going to be individual. We're not going to be the same. I'm at one with the trees and the tigers, and we share the same life force and the same prana, and and all that stuff. I am one with that. And in this human experience, recognizing this human experience, we are not the same, right? Will there come a point when I can honor your difference and you can honor mine and there not be a hierarchy to it? Right? That this is better than this, or this is better than this, or this is better than this. I pray that there will one day be equality, and for me, it's doing this work around this. That makes sense. But we'll never be the same, right?
And I'm not asking us to be the same. And this is not about a skin tone difference.
Exactly.
This is about why, as humans, is everything binary?
I pray that's my hope and prayer.
Why do we always have to
That's
go
right.
one or the other?
I agree. And the invitation of yoga is to move, that there is something beyond the binary. There is something beyond the binary. And that's the invitation of yoga, to be able to move beyond the binary. Right? And the examination is look how it shows up in life. That's the first thing, is being aware. Just look at it, my likes and dislikes, my preferences in this, and how I'm attached even to a body. Do you understand what I'm saying?
You're attached to.
Right, I think that I am a body, right? That this is all of who I am, right? So there's something beyond the binary, and that's the invitation. That's the invitation, to be able to move beyond binary at all levels. Yeah. And in order to move beyond binary, the first thing I have to do is tell the truth that it exists. You cannot heal what you do not acknowledge. So I got to tell the truth about what is, that this is what's going on, and this is what's going on, and this is what it is. There's no shot of healing until I tell the truth about what is. And that's really the invitation. Now, all right, we're not going to ignore this anymore. We can't deny it. And that's what Black Lives Matter was for me. It's standing up We cannot ignore, deny, pretend that this isn't happening, right? And that hashtag for me was to say, you know, stop the bullshit. We can't deny. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I had a question. I was thinking, I'm in social work school now, and one thing that I'm starting to realize is, you know, we start to see all these social problems, but until there's policy and law really behind that, there isn't a lot of change. So what do you think would be a really significant change in that arena?
I don't even know.
What do you have, are there, or anybody?
I think it's, you know, distribution of resources.
Voting.
Right, there's definitely a distribution of resources issue. You know, at so many levels. Distribution of resources. There's just so much on that. Like that thing, this isn't gonna be easy.
It's music.
Say it again.
Music is the only thing that I believe that I see the world come together. All races, all colors, all ethnicities. It seems like it's the only thing that brings everybody together, and they forget about what they look like, and they forget about who they're with. And it seems like it's the only substance that nobody, it doesn't matter who you are or what you're with or what ethnicity you have. We're jamming. That's it.
It's pretty beautiful.
Yeah.
I was in a meeting once, one night, very upset about one of the shootings months ago, you know, and it was like, you know, I don't know how to live in this world and with all this going on, and his comment was to think globally and act locally.
Globally, yeah.
And I just love that.
Yeah.
That the little things that you can do, you can't make policy change.
Right.
You know, you can't change politics, but you can do things smiling at people, you know, being kind.
Yeah.
That, and I can do that.
Yeah.
I can act locally.
Right.
So that's, I think, part of the change that can
Right,
happen.
right. And, you know, there's a thing that we was talking about that little writing. When I don't speak up and I let this continue, the samskara gets deeper. It just keeps being deeper. So even when I'm uncomfortable, you know, I'm out of integrity with myself, and I don't sleep well at night if I don't stand up and say, you know, something. So,
I think voting.
You know, more.
Yeah, I've been wanting to say something, but it's really emotional, you know. I feel so, I don't know, honored to be part of this conversation at all, and humbled and sad, and I feel like my heart is in knots, you know. Because, you know, I don't know, like growing up, it wasn't always that way. You know, I grew up in the Bronx, and it wasn't like that in my family. Like, I had all different friends, and then you get to a certain age, and that's when, like, it seemed like everybody started to pull to their own place. And then as I got older, it was more and more, and yeah, I got the social work background. I don't know, it's just, you know, I worked in the field for a while. There was a lot of discrepancies even there about how people were treated and who was being served and serviced and the whole thing. And then I went back to school and took classes on institutional racism, and it was almost like there's this subconscious thing going on that it was like, oh, okay, you know. So that helped to bring up my awareness. But then I went on with my life, you know, dealing with it every day, and then that kind of like, you know, what do you do with this? I think the videos on Facebook are so important. I mean, I don't watch Fox News. I avoid the news. You know, maybe it's an ignorant thing to say that I get a lot of my news on Facebook, but I actually do, because I feel like some of those videos are from the people who are in those situations. And as a yogi, yeah, we're all one, but it's kind of like, I think the place where we're all human, which you touched on, is the compassion, is that when we see someone suffering, no matter who they are, there's something that happens, you know? know, it's a shift and a change. And when we can connect with that at that deep place, you know, but I'm still looking for like, okay, so where do I go? I feel like this is a really good place, and I thank you for having this conversation.
You hit on something really, really key for me. It was, you know, what we were talking about a little bit earlier. The key for me is to get out of the matrix. Because we're in, as long as we're in the same systemic, that we're in the freaking matrix. We're in the matrix, right? And so the invitation here is to be aware first that I am in the matrix, right? And then do my work to step out of the matrix, right? And that's awareness, right? Because this is, you know, you could argue this anyway. You hear the system's broken. The system's working exactly the way the system was designed to work. It's working exactly the way that it was designed to work. It was set up like this, and it's working. Right? Right?
What do you do?
And like I said, awareness is step one, right? That I am in this, that this is set up in this matrix. That's step one.
Where you have a bunch of people that are just constantly there to keep other people down. And there's no way to go about changing that there because they constantly maintain power. What do you do?
Yeah,
like it's scary there. Because at what point does like I hate to say it, but at what point does peace just not work anymore?
I hear you. Woo! I love it. Okay, so listen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just going across the room.
Do you want a time check?
Yeah, what time is it?
It's almost 7:40.
Oh, holy shit. All right. So we got about, we'll do 10 minutes. All right. And then we're going to do a practice. All right. And it's, well, I'll talk about that later. So, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I've had a lot of feelings. I've been having like this. I've been responding to everybody in my head because I can't actually respond. So my first thing when I got on the wait list and I was like, I hope I can get into this was, well, everybody who's going to come probably wants to talk about this. The people who don't want to talk about it aren't going to be here. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation about how to talk to them about it. Because I've had yogis, sometimes before my classes or after, who say, how are you doing? And I tell them how I'm doing. And they're like, well, look at my new dog. Did you just hear what I said?
Yeah.
Or,
and, you know, they're like, let me cheer you up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I've tried to have conversations with certain people, and they just either push away and like deny, or they just avoid. And then there are others who do want to engage. And then there are some who understand. And I find that those who deny or avoid, I feel like no matter how long I talk to them, no matter what tactic I take, it is not going to get through to them. So sometimes I'm like, if more people in this room, and when I say people in this room, white people come out and talk to them, it's like if they see somebody who they can relate to saying like, hey, there's a problem, then I think people will listen. Me, black women saying there's a problem, hello, they're like, yeah. Of course you're going to think that. Of course you're going to see there's a problem. And then I give sometimes like experiences that I've had, one on the main line on St. Asaph with the police. And I was like, oh, that happened in November. And I tell the story and they're like, oh, you've even been infected? Yes, me. Okay? And it's like, does it take for you to see someone who you actually know to be affected? Do I need to get shocked for you to actually maybe do something? Right. I hope it doesn't come to that for people to like actually have someone who they know, a black person who they know, and then they get affected. So I think one way that we will see policy change, changes in our laws, are if not just the Black Lives Matter movement speaks up, but the empathizers actually speak up, who are white, and say something over and over and over and over and louder. Then the powers that be will, okay, we have to.
What do we call be an ally?
Yes. Yes. We need allies.
To add on to that, when we were talking, I was thinking, I have 5 teenagers in my life that are more afraid that they're going to die of GMO corn than, than anything else, any other kind of violence. And I think that is what they bring home, though. It's what's taught in school, in their class. It's changed our diets. It's our changed, no more plastic water bottles. They teach me because it's in their curriculum. It's a different way of teaching history. And I really think I'm ignorant. I have to have some new history lessons. But they're younger. We could change their curriculum. We could talk about it more. We could tell the truth. And how things haven't changed so much since slavery for Native Americans. We could talk about, we could tell the truth.
And again, awareness is.
And then we talk about it, and then it would,
I don't know. Come on.
So, I mean, my mind's going in like a million different directions, but I think the most important thing to me now is trying to teach this to my kids. I have 2 daughters, and they're half Mexican, so I don't know how to explain to them the racism that they're going to face in life that I see my husband face pretty much every day. I don't know how to tell them that, and how to teach them to appreciate, their culture. And I want them, like, I try to get them to speak Spanish, and my parents are racist. And whenever they're around, they tell them not to speak Spanish. So I have to deal with, trying to make sure they have a relationship with my family, but I don't really know how to talk to them because they've been like that forever. And they haven't changed since.
Your parents?
Yes, they haven't changed since, my kids were born. And if I try to talk about the fact that they're Mexican, no, they're not Mexican, they're white. And I said, no, when I talk about my kids, I say my kids are Mexican because for me, I don't have a lot of white friends, and this is probably the most white people I've been around for a while. So I thought that was really funny when you said, who wants to go to a class to talk about race with white people? I felt the same way when I signed up. But it's just to try to, teach them to be prepared for what they're going to face in life, because people see my husband and they assume that he's a landscaper, that he's undocumented, that he doesn't speak English. People have come up to him while he's cutting our grass, asking how much he'll charge to cut their grass, and just stuff like that.
That's because he's white. My sister's married to a Latino. Nobody asked him any of those questions. But it's but it's a different. It's like a different thing. So it's a different mix.
It is, and I find that unfortunately I don't really relate to a lot of people at my job. When I hear them having conversations, I feel like white people need to talk more about race, because all I hear is I'm talking about planning their weddings or what color curtains they're going to buy, and I'm over here thinking about if my husband's going to be deported or not. So that's basically what I have to worry about, and it needs to be opened up. The conversation needs to happen.
Yeah, it does. And for me, I gotta watch myself when I get judgmental about them, because then I'm not in a good place. So I have to really, really be aware that they're having their subjective reality. That is their subjective reality. And all, I want my subjective reality honored. And I'm gonna make sure my subjective reality is honored in a conversation. Because then if it's not, then I'm out of integrity with myself.
Isn't what Black Lives Matter is? That our subjective integrity is honored as Black people, right. And I think that's what people aren't hearing, because that's all Black people are saying, is that
that my
subjective matters, period. So please don't shoot me.
I heard a great, and I'm not going to repeat it correctly. Someone was discussing what the words Black Lives Matter meant to them, and it was an African American writer. And she said, and she maybe got it somewhere else as well. She said it's like being invited to a dinner party.
Yeah.
Did you say this?
I read that. Yeah.
Invited to a dinner party, and everybody's welcoming, but and everybody has a plate and a fork and a knife, but you don't.
Yes.
And you have to be, so everybody's eating and happy, and they're like, oh, don't worry that you don't have utensils and a plate, just eat like everybody else, but you're like, I don't have what I need to be included.
Yeah, that was a really good analogy. Yeah, that's why. Well, yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say one thing, because I'm angrier than when I walked in, which I think is okay, but I just want to acknowledge that. Like, think globally, act locally. I love that. Thank you for sharing your story about, like, you have the power to affect those around you, but, like, forget being a yogi and forget really everything except for the fact that I don't want to make the assumption, but probably most of us in the room are citizens of a democracy. And we're supposed to be able to influence policy. That's not happening, and we should be mad. We should be mad about that. That's where I'm at.
I get it. Yeah, I absolutely get it. Absolutely. Right? And the question becomes is how can we influence a change? Right? What can we do to influence a change? I do have a set of resources. Right? And I don't know how, do you have names?
Yeah, everybody signed up so I can email them out.
So there's a couple organizations. One is, was founded by a dear friend of mine named Carrie Kelly. And it's called Citizen Well. And they put together resources for racial justice and healing. And, you know, how to and they're doing a lot of things. She was talking about doing some things since the Democratic National Convention's here, right? Doing some movement things relative to that. Did you?
We're talking about possibly doing a workshop here the Sunday prior and then doing something to organize at the DNC.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, those are some possibilities. But, you know, I absolutely agree with you, and a lot of this, there's more questions than answers, right? And part of the invitation of yoga for me is to be willing to be in the question, to be willing to live in the question. And this challenges me because I want answers. I fucking want answers. You know, I want answers, right? And the invitation here for now is, and thank God, because this was something that wasn't happening. But we could get this many people in the room and talk about it, right? So, you know, it ain't easy. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say one thing. So I keep hearing the word invitation, and I guess I just want to remind everyone that, like, we are the invitation. We are living, walking, talking invitations. We cannot control what other people do, what they think, what they feel, but we can be an invitation to say, hey, join me. Hey, do you want to hear what I have to say? We have to do it with compassion, because I know in my own life, when I get angry and when I blame and when I make people feel bad about their actions, they shut down, they don't listen. But when I am open and calm and grounded and just offer a different perspective, people, they might not come around the first time, they might not come around the second time, but then they might say, you know what, can you tell me more about that? So I just don't want people to forget how much power is in that, the invitation.
And that's exactly right. And that's why, you know, I do my practices every day, right? So that I'm not carrying around this unnecessary stress and tension in my body in a way that I can't be an invitation, right? That I start pushing people away rather than being the invitation to come, you know, let's look at this differently, right? So, and that's why this whole thing, the whole practice thing is so important for me. You know, otherwise I am acting out of anger, I'm acting out of hostility, I'm acting out of trauma, I'm acting out of all the rest of those things. So it's important for me to do my work on the, and some of it for me is like the Bhagavad Gita, you know, which talks about you do your deal, and you let go of the result. Right? If I'm going to go into something with an expectation that you should do this, or you should do that, or you should, everybody should do this, that, and the other, I can't. I can't influence that. I mean, mine's, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and I can't change you. I can't change anybody. So, okay, we're going to practice. So we'll take a little bit of break, and we're going to do some things. It's a really simple practice. We're not going to, do any jump in, jump out, jump up, jump around, jump through. Those kinds of things. It's much more of we will do a few little active things, but it's much more of a release kind of practice, which means, more holds and more looking at where we're holding tension in our body and how we can move that energy, right? So that I truly can be the invitation. So let's take a little break and come on back.
Thank you, Nikki.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.